Welcome again to today's webinar. My name is Francisco Ruiz. I'm Senior Manager at the National Alliance of State and Territorial AIDS Directors, as well as the current co-chair of the National Latino AIDS Action Network. Before we get started, I want to share with you some webinar etiquette. As you see before you, during the Q&A section, you can unmute yourself. Currently, everyone is muted. It is *7 to unmute. During the chat, during the webinar, you could feel free to type in some of your questions using the chat feature, which is on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. So we could have that function going on throughout the webinar. And then again, towards the end, we can have verbal questions or will be welcome during the Q&A section. Thanks again. After we complete this webinar, we will have a link for evaluation. And we ask that folks please complete that evaluation to kind of strengthen the next upcoming webinars taking place. So again, thank you for joining us. Today's topic is abstract writing. So we have a great speaker today to give us some tips and suggestions around writing a successful abstract for AIDS 2012. Today's webinar will include a brief introduction by myself, as well as then we'll have our keynote speaker, Miriam from the Journal of the International AIDS Society, will provide us some information of how to write and submit an abstract for the upcoming conference, the International AIDS Conference. And then we will speak to a little bit about the Community Abstract Mentoring Program, also known as CAMP, which is a service available for free of charge for U.S. domestic individuals who are interested in strengthening their abstracts. And then we'll have a Q&A and discuss a few other activities in the upcoming webinars during this series. So at this point, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker. Again, Miriam joins us with the International AIDS Society and is the current managing editor of the Journal of the International AIDS Society. She completed her bachelor's in biology at Imperial College in 2002 and then moved to University of Dundee in Scotland to undertake a PhD research project in molecular oncology. She's done several work throughout Europe, and as well during her postdoc, Miriam was involved in editing of the manuscripts for the research group and university teaching activities. Joining the International AIDS Society as a managing editor of the Journal of the International AIDS Society since April 2010, she continues pursuing her interest in communication of science. With that, I would like to invite Miriam to join us. Again, Miriam, please press *7 to unmute yourself.
Okay. Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Miriam.
Okay, great. Thank you. Greetings from snowy Switzerland. It is a great pleasure taking part in this webinar. So I'm here to talk about abstract writing. Next slide. So the outline of my presentation is shown here. I will start with a short introduction to the Journal of the IS and show you some helpful resources. I will then talk about the requirements for your AIDS 2012 abstract, and then we will look at each abstract section in turn. I will present best practices and guidelines of how to write an abstract and showcase an example of what to look out for and how to improve an abstract. I will then explain how abstracts are selected and reasons why abstracts are commonly rejected. At the end, I will also briefly touch upon applications for workshops. The main objectives of my talk are therefore to enable you to develop a complete abstract and to make you aware of how it will be selected. Next slide. So, I'm the managing editor of the Journal of the IS. We are an online-only, peer-reviewed scientific journal and free to access. Our main mission is to strengthen research capacity in resource-limited settings and to support less experienced authors. We organize skills-building workshops and trainings in scientific writing, and we mentor authors as well. Next slide. As part of our mentoring activities, I also oversee the Abstract Mentor Program for the conference. This program is independent of the abstract submission system and free of charge as well. We have over 150 mentors that cover all tracks, and they give feedback on your draft abstracts. You can use our program also alongside other mentoring initiatives such as the CAMP. We are open until the 1st of February for submission and accessible through the AIDS 2012 website that is shown here. Next slide. We do require the users of the Abstract Mentor Program to access our abstract writing e-course first. That's shown here, before they can submit their draft abstracts. This is a great online training resource and also free of charge, which we developed in partnership with the Health E Foundation. It includes summary tables like the one shown here in orange, such good and bad examples, as well as exercises for an interactive learning experience. Next slide. Before we look at how to write an abstract, let's revisit the definition of an abstract first. A conference abstract is a summary of your work that you would like to present, and it includes all the important details and data from your study. It is important to remember that the abstract-driven sessions at the conference are more scientific in nature because delegates look to these for evidence-informed best practices and lessons learned. So simple descriptions of programs or interventions are not adequate. There must be some evaluative aspect and some way to describe and discuss outcomes. The difficulty in writing a good abstract is its length. It's quite short, so trying to squeeze in all the information into tight word limits is what is the challenge here. While developing your abstract, you want to constantly think, can I say this more concisely in a clearer way? Have I included sufficient information for the readers, or is there superfluous detail on the other hand? Next slide. The guidelines for AIDS 2012 abstracts are given in detail on the website, and I recommend you carefully go through them before submitting your abstract. I will just give a short summary of the main points to consider here. Your abstract needs to be written in English. The title can be a maximum of 50 words. The abstract text a maximum of 300 words. The system will not allow you to enter more in any case. You can add up to 3 tables and 3 figures, which do not count towards your word limit. You have to submit your abstract through the conference profile, and you can submit as many abstracts as you want. However, one person cannot present more than 2 abstracts at the conference. A great new feature this year is that you can edit your abstracts until the deadline, the 15th of February. But you always have to remember to press the submit button every time you edit your abstract. Next slide. The requirements are that you need to structure your abstract into 4 sections with the headings background, methods, results, and conclusions. Do not be alarmed if you're more familiar with alternative headings such as issue, description, lessons learned, and next steps. They're very, very similar in what information needs to go in which section. One section of your abstract that is not shown here, which is the title, and that's where we're going to start. So next slide. In the title, you need to summarize your study in 50 words or less. Your title, therefore, needs to be short and specific to your study. Hence, it needs to also be representative and at the same time informative. Think of the questions, what is the topic? Who is the study population? Where was the study done? How was the study done? If your title can answer these questions, then you have covered the main information needed in the title. It is not necessary to give away your conclusions in the title. Think of your title as your mini advertisement. Delegates will read the titles in the conference program, and they will make a decision of what to go and see among all the competing sessions. So if your title is too broad and people can't figure out if they're going to be interested in what you're going to present, then they're going to go somewhere else. Next slide. So let's look at an example. Let's look at the top line first. It says, learn to lead, training opinion leaders increases HIV knowledge. Thinking about our questions now, what is the topic? So a training, here you would think a training to increase HIV knowledge. Who's the target population? Opinion leaders? But there is no information about the where and the how. So although it gives us some indication of what this presentation will cover, the title could be more specific. Also, catchy phrases such as this one here, learn to lead, may sound clever, but do not add value to the title. An improved version of this title could read something like, and that's the bottom example, evaluation of an HIV education training program aimed at Black opinion leaders piloted in the District of Columbia, USA. In this title, we cover the what, which is with HIV education training program, and it appears to be a pilot one. The who is more specific this time. We say Black opinion leaders, so a specific target group. And the where, so in the District of Columbia, USA. And how, It is an evaluation of the training. So there's lots of information in just 19 words in this title, and the arrows sort of point to the different information. So next slide. I've lost my page. So moving on to the background section. This is the introduction to your study. Here, 3 main messages need to be included. By answering the questions, what is the topic of the abstract? Why was the study done? And what is the aim of the study? This will give your readers information about the general topic, the motivation behind the study, so whether it was the gap in knowledge or the problem that you wanted to address, and the aim, so what you try to achieve with your study. Adapted level of your introduction to your audience. Are you going to a specialized HIV conference where everyone will be familiar with the latest UNAIDS figures on the epidemic, or are you presenting at a more general conference covering infectious diseases, for example? So you should really adapt the background section accordingly. Next slide. So another example. We're looking at the top paragraph. As many as 34 million people are infected by HIV, and for every person put on treatment, 2 more are infected with the virus. In the United States, African Americans are also affected by the HIV epidemic. Late presentation of HIV-infected individuals is a global problem. A training program was implemented to educate leaders on HIV. So that's our example. And we're looking at the 3 elements that should be included. The topic, so that appears to be African Americans affected by the HIV epidemic. The motivation for the study seems to be late presentation of HIV-infected individuals, but it is not clear what the specific problem is that was addressed. Lastly, the aim, which should be detailed in the last sentence. We are given information here that a training program was implemented, but exactly what the study was aimed to accomplish is actually quite unclear. Again, I think we can tighten this up and improve the introduction. So the first sentence, which is about the 34 million people infected, that can be deleted. Delegates at AIDS 2012 will know this. Let's try and build in more specificity and clarity. The next sentence could be changed to, in the United States, African Americans are disproportionately affected by the HIV epidemic. So that's the second paragraph. The topic is still African Americans affected by the HIV epidemic, but now we clarify that there are a particular population at risk. The motivation again remains late presentation, but now we refer specifically to the problem within this population. So we write, late presentation of HIV-infected individuals remains an urgent health concern for this population. And then we follow with some detail about the angle by which we try to address this problem, i.e. the training program targeted at Black opinion leaders. So we say, the Black HIV Society has developed a training program to increase HIV awareness and knowledge among opinion leaders of Black communities. The last sentence of the background then sets the scene by specifically stating the objectives of the study. Here, this was the evaluation of the educational program. So we write, the aim of the study was to evaluate the educational component of the program. A good introduction will lead readers through a type of information funnel from general topic to specific aim, convincing the audience of the importance of the theme and your study. Next slide. Now that we've raised the expectations of our readers of what is to come, we give them the tools in the method section to understand your findings. The details of your methodology depend on your type of study, and it is hard to generalize. So if your study was a basic biomedical or clinical study, you will talk about here about the experiments, how you conducted your experiments, what the intervention was about. If your study was more social or political sciences, then you talk maybe about interviews or focus group discussions. And if your study was more in the program sciences part, then you will maybe talk more about implementation of programs and evaluations. So though not applicable for every study, think of the following questions. When was your study conducted and where? Who conducted the study and who was the study population? What were the main outcomes measured and how was the data collected and analyzed? Answering these questions in your message section will give readers information about the population, the context and time frame, the content and execution of the study, and how you arrived at your findings. This section is really critical for reviewers when they judge your abstract. Next slide. Let us go back to our educational training program for opinion leaders example. So the message section here reads, the training program was designed to educate people on HIV. Popular opinion leaders who would benefit from the program were recruited by the research team. Written informed consent was sought from all participants, but they were not asked about the HIV status. The participants worked in faith-based institutions, politics, or media. A test with 120 knowledge questions on HIV was given to the participants before and after the training. So here are the 5 questions that we're interested in. When was the study conducted? No information. So it could be 10 years ago for all we know. Where was the study conducted? Again, no information. That's disappointing. Who conducted the study? The message section tells us that the target population was popular opinion leaders. That's important information. And that the research team conducted the study, which is less important unless it wasn't obvious. For example, the study was conducted in collaboration with a community-based organization called Light for Life, for example. So what was the main outcome measured? From the test, we know the questions assess knowledge on HIV, which would be the outcome of interest. This could be maybe a little bit more clearer. How was the study conducted? We are told it is a test before and after the training. It would be good to have more information about the test and how the results were analyzed. So an improved version could look something like in the second paragraph. The training program consists of 5 educational modules of 2 hours each, covering, for example, HIV biology and prevention measures. So we've added more detail about the training program. The program was piloted between October 2010 and May 2011 in the District of Columbia, USA. So we now included information about the when and the where. Popular opinion leaders were purposely selected from Black faith-based institutions, political groups, and media outlets. Participants' HIV status was not ascertained. So we also want to inform readers more about the study population and how the participants were selected. So we've done that. A pre-post-test design with closed-ended questions was used to evaluate the transfer of specific HIV knowledge covered by the training program. Results are described using summary statistics. So finally, we added more clarity on the outcome measure and how the data was collected and analyzed, so a much more improved message section. Next slide. Next slide again, sorry. Okay, having sorted out the message section, we come to the all-important results section. Here you should describe your data and finding, not someone else's. The purpose of the results section is to show what was the knowledge you gained, and it should be written in the past tense. Be as specific as possible, especially if you have quantitative data. Show off these numbers. You should avoid vague terms such as many or some. This can mean different things to different people. Also, careful with qualitative words that are not substantiated. Important benefits were noted, for example, or significant differences were seen. Your readers will want to see how you ascertain this. Remember what you promised in your background section. Your results need to relate back to the aim that you stated. And finally, think about differences between subpopulation that can have an important effect on outcomes. And wherever applicable, you should disaggregate your data by sex and provide a gender analysis. Next slide. Okay, let's find out how good our opinion leaders fared in the test in our example. The results section reads, 79.31% of participants consented to taking part in the study, and 42 participants were finally included in the study with complete data sets. Males were represented with 62% and females with 38%. Most participants were over 50. In total, 17 participants were from faith-based institutions and 19 from political groups, and only 6 from media. Comparing the number of correct answers before and after the training, a significant increase in knowledge was noted. This was also previously reported by a study in Uganda. So here are the elements to look out for. Is the data described from the study? In the last sentence, it actually refers to someone else's findings. Is it written in the past tense? Yes, okay. Are the findings described in the most specific manner? I can see a most here and significant increase, and the over 50s, it's not clear, is that months or years? So improvements to be made here. Do the results link back to the aim? Yes, we are comparing before and after test results to evaluate the training. Are data disaggregated by sex? Yes, it states male and female participants, but there is actually no gender analysis. This section obviously needs some improvements. The first sentence states how many participants took part. We should not start a sentence with a number, and we always want to use numbers or percentages consistently, for example, in the decimal places. Let's rewrite this to read, in total, 46 out of 58 popular opinion leaders consented to participation. As you can see, we also add more information about what a complete data set means. Then we go on and take all the demographic data and place it in the table. So we say the demographic data of the 42 participants is shown in Table 1. That is out of the way and frees up space for more important results, which says overall correct average responses increased from 38% to 72%. Among the female participants, the increase was from 32% to 78%, and for males from 36% to 66%. The largest increase in knowledge was seen among faith-based leaders. No difference in increase between the three age groups was noted. So we now have deleted other people's data and still got the tense right, added specific results. We still relate back to the aim, and we also added a gender analysis. So this is not a bad result section now. Next slide. As mentioned, we banned the demographic data to a table. So a few words about tables and graphs. You need to make a judgment call of whether your data can be more clearly and concisely presented in a graph or table over the text. Rules of thumb here are do not repeat data. Use tables for data sets and graphs to show trends. Just because you're allowed 3 tables and 3 graphs does not mean you should add all 6 come what may. Use them wisely as they do break up the textual flow of your abstract. Make sure your table or graph is easily readable and interpretable. Therefore, label axes, columns, and rows, and always provide headers and legends where it's needed. Next slide. Let's look at the example. And we can see here in the top table there's room for improvement. So first we need a title, so the table can stand on its own. Then the columns need headings as well to help readers understand what the numbers mean. Careful with colors. They may not show in a black and white abstract book, and also consider people with color blindness. As with the results section, use decimal places consistently. Again, here units are missing. Are these days, months, or years? Help us out. An improved version of this table would therefore look something like on the bottom here, which is much better. Next slide. Right, we have now reached the grand finale of your abstract. It's the conclusions. Summarizing your main conclusions involves 3 statements. First of all, your take-home message that is based on your results. Then we step up one and mention the implications they could have. And some speculation here is possible. If important recommendations can be drawn from your data, mention them here now. You can also suggest future studies and, if applicable, your limitations. Sometimes these go hand in hand when you know the limitation of your study that should be addressed in a future study. Therefore, think of these 3 questions when writing your conclusion section. What is the important information from my abstract? What do my results mean for the field? What are the next steps to be taken? As I mentioned, this needs to be strictly based on your data. Space is precious, so avoid obvious statements and repeating your results again in detail, and also do not overgeneralize. Next slide. What does our example conclusion look like? Well, the top one says knowledge increased from 38% to 72% among the opinion leaders trained. This is an important achievement and needs to be implemented worldwide. Further training programs should be developed to target other at-risk groups. So the main message from the authors is that knowledge increased. According to them, the implications are these are important findings and have worldwide significance. They recommend that more such training programs should be developed. I think we're skeptical. Repeating the results we already described is wasting precious words. Why is this an important achievement? And if this targeted Black opinion leaders, can we really generalize to worldwide implementation? Also, we evaluated the training, not its impact, so we cannot really recommend further programs without this knowledge. What about the version at the bottom, the second paragraph? The evaluation suggests that the training program increased knowledge on HIV of the participants. Education of key opinion leaders is feasible and could contribute through informed leadership to increased HIV awareness in communities. Further evaluation of the impact of the program on indicators such as HIV testing rates are needed to support wider implementation. So our conclusions are based on the evaluation, and we know that knowledge increased. We can therefore imply that educating opinion leaders is a doable task, and now we extrapolate a little that this could therefore enhance HIV awareness within their communities. But as we don't know this for sure, we recommend further studies on the actual impact of this program on the communities. Next slide. So this is just to point out, again, these 3 sentences that you want to cover in your conclusion. So you're done. One final word about abbreviations in abstracts. Very established ones such as HIV and AIDS, they can be used anytime. Other abbreviations should only be used if they're repeated more than 3 times in the abstract. They need to be spelled out the first time they're used, and there should not be any abbreviations in the title at all. Now your abstract is in the hands of the reviewers. It is important to remember that reviewers look at around 50 to 200 abstracts. So your abstract will be judged in relation to many others, and also it's important to remember that if your abstract is badly written, the reviewer will have many others to choose from. The guiding questions that are provided to the reviewers are these listed here, and the ones I've colored in magenta basically mean that these are the things that you can address during the writing of your abstract. The other ones are more inherent to your study. The reviewers also receive this scoring table that includes the different criteria for when to give a score. And each abstract will be scored by 3 reviewers, and the average will determine your final score. And only the top half scoring abstracts will be considered for inclusion in the program. Next slide. Depending on the number of abstracts submitted overall, your chances of success are around 40%, but for the sought-after oral spots, your chances are much less, around 2%. One of the main reasons why abstracts get rejected is fraud, which includes plagiarism. Abstracts that are submitted in the wrong track do not get assessed by the most qualified reviewers and often fail at this stage. Abstracts that are poorly written, as mentioned earlier, will not please the reviewers either. These 3 reasons are the ones that can be, again, addressed during the writing and submission of your abstracts. Other reasons for rejection involve problems inherent to the study, again, and include poor scientific content, data is too preliminary, and lack of novelty. Next slide. Next slide, sorry. Hello? Oh, great, okay. Some more logistical guidelines now when you come to submit your abstract. Through Conference Profile, when you log in, you get to this portal, which gives you access to all your conference-related activities. Abstract submission is through the top tab that I highlighted. And as I will speak in a minute also about workshops, this is where you go to submit these applications, the second highlighted tab. Next slide. When you submit an abstract, the corresponding author is the submitting author. So in fact, that person doesn't have to be listed as an author. So if you have a very nice assistant who can do this for you, that's great. All sections need to be complete before you can press the submit button. You then create a new abstract. First, you need to choose the track and specific category. A description of the tracks is available on the website, so check that out. If you're in doubt, you can email us also for advice. It's important to remember if, for example, your subject area falls under more than one track, they're often called cross-track, you have to decide what type of audience are you targeting. Are you targeting clinicians or programmatic experts, and that can help you maybe decide on which track you want to submit to. You also need to select your country of research. It's a simple tick boxes. Then you need to insert your abstract title and the text. You will then upload tables, graphs, and images. And there's tick boxes to provide an ethical research declaration, so that information doesn't have to be in the abstract itself. Then you have to list the authors and, if clickable, the name of your study group. And you can then determine also the order of the authors will appear above your abstract, and you have to choose the presenting author for that abstract. And for that also you need to provide a short biography. There's also tick boxes to declare authorship, that all authors have contributed to the study significantly, and you also need to provide a declaration that the abstract has not been previously published. Next slide. A quick word about workshops, which are part of the conference program and not those in the Global Village. There's two different types of workshops. So this one is for conference program inside the conference itself. Workshops promote and enhance opportunities for knowledge transfer, skills development, and collaborative learning. You usually try and get small audiences together to encourage more participatory workshops. Your application has to be in English, but you can actually hold the workshop in another language, and it needs to be an HIV-related topic. Proposals demonstrating collaborations and partnerships with other groups will increase your chances of acceptance. In total, we have 60 workshops at the conference. They're either 90 or 180 minutes. 20 workshops are actually pre-designed by the conference committee, so they're not open for applications. But 40 will be selected from proposals submitted. So it is a bit of a competition. There's not many spaces, so it has to be a good workshop. Next slide. What your workshop application will have to include are there's different categories and different levels, such as intermediate, advanced, depending on which type of audience you're targeting. You need to provide a title. Your proposal needs to include learning objectives, the format, is it a discussion, a panel, and the different materials. Are you going to give handouts? Is it just a presentation? So on. You need to specify your target audience and your number of the participants that you would like to have, the duration and the language, and you also need to give details about your facilitators and their experience and expertise. If you have any questions, that's the email address down here, workshops@AIDS2012.org, and they have also put together a great guideline on their website, which you can access also through the AIDS 2012 website, and I actually wrote an example workshop application for that guideline, so have a look at that if you're interested. Next slide. And that's me. Thank you very much for listening.
Great. Thank you, Miriam. We're going to have time for Q&A at the end of this session. I wanted to just go over quickly, for those who may or may not know, Miriam was actually one of the key trainers for the Community Abstract Mentoring Program, which we call CAMP. And the program is available. It opened up December 1st and closes February 1st. So this is a complimentary mentoring program in addition to what IES currently has, as Miriam referenced earlier in her presentation. This mentoring program is for domestic U.S. individuals. It is free of charge. The website is located on the slide, www.abstractassistance.org. And again, they receive training from IAS regarding how to successfully submit abstracts. And I just wanted to share with you just kind of a screenshot of the page. It mirrors very similar to the IAS submission process and formatting in terms of the different background, method, results, and conclusion. And then there's a section that you see on the screen to include the text of your abstract, your draft abstract, and then you could also put a comment and say, can you please look at sentence number 2? So then the abstract mentor will be then provided response and feedback on your abstract. And so again, it's an interactive process that you could go back and forth with your mentor on your abstract before you submit it officially to AIDS 2012. So again, this is not an official submission to the conference, but it is a service that is free of charge through support of the Office of AIDS Research at NIH, who's supporting this effort. And so for more information, again, the website is abstractassistance.org. And so at this point, I want to open up the lines. So if you have any questions, I haven't seen any questions come through the chat feature, except for if folks will be receiving the PowerPoint presentation. And I sent a comment that everyone will receive a copy of the presentation upon completion of the evaluation that you will be linked to after this session. Are there any questions for Miriam? Please press *7. I know we received some questions as folks were registering for this webinar, so I'm actually looking at that right now. Let's see what questions we have. Miriam, I think this is somewhat you referenced in your presentation. Are there workshops that will have high priority for the conference in terms of which means, likelihood of acceptance?
Well, I think obviously the criteria for selection are highlighted in the guidelines, and I mentioned a few in terms of being collaborative and being very participatory and interactive. So obviously, the more you comply with these criteria, the better chances of your acceptance. In terms of topics, it is actually very open. I think because the theme this year is turning the tide together, I think there's definitely going to be a big push towards more collaborative efforts. And I can see a lot of sort of community-based research topics being very important, program science and implementation issues, and definitely skills building, especially targeted towards resource-limited settings or populations at risk. I think that could be a very important topics to come up that could have a higher chance of acceptance for workshops.
Thank you. Are there any questions on the phone? *7 to unmute. I see a question on the chat. It says, can you submit the same workshop to the Global Village and the conference? This may be done to increase your chances of being accepted since the conference workshops will have more competition.
Yes, you can submit the same application to the conference as to the Global Village. You might want to consider, obviously, that your audience might be a little bit different. The Global Village is obviously open to all public, so you might have different audiences in the conference versus the Global Village. So that's maybe something you want to consider. And I think, again, maybe you want to look specifically at the guidelines for the different workshop applications, just to compare exactly, where you might have a better chance of acceptance.
Thank you. Another question is, what are the, in terms of the acceptance rates? I know you discussed this on other webinars. What's the acceptance rates for oral presentations versus poster presentations? And when you submit your abstract, do you select which way you want to go, via oral or poster?
So in terms of the chances of acceptance, sorry, do you want to say something?
I'm sorry?
Did you want to say something else?
No, that was it.
Okay. So in terms of the chances of acceptance, it very much depends how many abstracts are accepted, obviously, overall. And this year, we have previously had a category that was CD-ROM only, so where abstracts were accepted to be only published on the CD-ROM and not within the actual conference itself. And we won't have that category this year, so the acceptance rate actually goes down a lot of what we had previously. Acceptance, like I said, will probably be around 40%. Oral presentations, about 2%. Oral poster discussions, also very limited spaces, so about 3%. And the rest are all posters. So, yeah, I mean, for simple poster exhibitions, your chances are the highest in terms of all categories. And I forgot your second part of the question, I'm sorry.
No, the second part was actually, and it also came through, again, the chat, is how do you, when you submit your abstract or your application, do you select, oral or poster or oral poster when you submit it online? Or does the committee who's reviewing the abstract make that decision for you?
No, you can't select which category you want your abstract to be sort of selected for. All abstracts will be scored similarly, so in comparison with each other. Like I said, the top half will be considered for the sessions, and there it depends, basically. The scientific program committee will shut themselves away for 3 days and look at all these abstracts, and they will try and build sessions with these abstracts. And similarly themed abstracts can be grouped together in a session. So it can sometimes happen that if that an abstract scores very highly, but because it stands on its own and there's no abstracts that are, in a similar theme that can be put together in a session, that abstract will actually then be, a poster rather than an oral presentation, because they can't build a sort of themed session around it. So this is actually a very loose process that very much depends on exactly what has been submitted. And then they fill the oral spaces first with the best abstracts that are similarly themed. Then they will select those that are as next best, and they will go into the oral poster discussion. And then everything else will then be filled for poster exhibitions, and then it goes strictly by scoring what is left over.
Thank you. Another question around the workshops. Can you discuss why workshops are a separate category versus the abstract piece when you submit it?
So the abstract, like I was saying, the abstracts are supposed to be summaries of studies, and they're supposed to be evidence-informed, best practices, research interventions, and so on. So they are very scientific in their nature. The workshops themselves are really meant to sort of promote skills and help people sort of develop specific tools that they need for their work. So, for example, we give these scientific writing workshops, so we are trying to help people publish their research or, submit successful abstracts. So that's like a skill we're building, and that's something that is not content-based as such in terms of, we had this study and this is what we learned from it. Here we're really trying to help people learn and grow in their capabilities. So they're much more focused at the participants and getting them a sort of learning experience and something they can take, something practical they can take away with them.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Star 7 to unmute yourself. All right, thank you. So I'm going to just share with you our upcoming presentations or webinars. As you know, this is a series of webinars that leading up to AIDS 2012. Again, this is supported through the Office of AIDS Research at NIH. Our next one will be focusing on mobilizing your community around the conference. So we'll have speakers on sharing examples of how we can mobilize the community, get them involved, and one such way would be through the Conference Hub program. And so we'll have some speakers speaking to or sharing information around the Conference Hubs. And then following that, we'll have a series of webinars looking at kind of skills building around PowerPoint presentations, poster presentations, public speaking, using the media, having interviews with the media, so all kinds of skill sets around the media. And then we'll have a final webinar series presentation around final updates, and we'll give you information around what NLAAN and partner organizations are doing with the Latino pre-conference, as well as some activities in the Global Village. So therefore, you'll see the website. The website has the recorded versions of all our webinars, and so currently you'll see the two webinars that we had previously. That was in November and December, which was what is AIDS 2012, and then the second one was Getting to AIDS 2012, which highlighted scholarship volunteer opportunities as well as a fundraising tool. Those webinars are recorded and are posted on our website that's listed there, as well as the links to register for all upcoming webinars. We have one more question, I believe, on the chat. Is there going to be any emphasis on including research that impact the transgender community? Miriam, did you catch that?
Yes, I did. I think, like I said, at-risk populations or particular target populations are going to be a focus at the conference. So I believe there will be something. But again, as I said, it very much depends on what is submitted to the conference and what we can build around those abstracts. So there needs to be a sort of significant amount of abstracts to be able to do something with them. So it would be nice to see for sure.
So I guess for the person that asked that question, make sure you submit your abstract and engage your partners to submit transgender-specific abstracts so we can have a couple sessions or workshops that are focusing on the transgender community. So if no other questions, thank you again for joining us. We'll be making this webinar available on our website, recorded version. But meantime, please complete the evaluation form. It helps us strengthen our webinar series. Thanks again.
Thank you. Please stand by.